Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well. Thank you very much for tuning into this video. Really appreciate the support and you taking the time. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe and smash the bell icon and drop a comment and all that other good stuff that helps us out. And yeah, I really appreciate it, but let's get cracking. So for today's video, we are talking about something that gets asked quite a lot, both in store and you just see it a lot on, online forums and on Facebook groups and all this kind of thing. And so the main thing about that is it a good idea, or should I, or is it possible to mix African cichlids with American cichlids? And it's important to note here, when I'm talking about African cichlids, I'm talking about like these guys, like Malawian Tanganyika or like Rift Lake cichlids. I'm not talking about like West Africans like your Jules or your Cribs or that. We are talking about the Rift Lake cichlids here. And what people want to know is like, can I mix, say, these guys, which are like my peacocks and hats, can I mix them with things like a Severum or an Oscar or angelfish or that kind of thing? And I mean, the thing I'm going to say is no. No, you can't. I would definitely not recommend it. If you're at all thinking about it, please recommend. I would ask that you reconsider. And I've got quite a few reasons for that. So, what I'm gonna go through them and explain each of them to you, so that maybe we can get a bit more of an understanding about why it's not a good idea and why I definitely wouldn't recommend you do it. So the first and probably the most obvious reason or point is going to be the required water parameters. And I know this is a contentious issue, but yeah, I really wouldn't recommend it, because African cichlids from the Rift Lakes, Malawi, Tanganyika, Victoria, are going to need a very high pH, very hard water with a lot of like minerals and stuff in it. Whereas for the most part, American cichlids are going to not want it as high. They might want it still above 7, the pH, but not like this tank here sits at about 8.2-ish. And I know a lot of people are going to say that you can, like, a fish is fine if it like adjusts to that. But I think the key distinction in here is like between whether a fish is fine and like surviving and like doing okay, between that and whether a fish is thriving and living its best life, essentially. One of the common things is like, oh, they're all tank bred, so it doesn't matter. But even a lot of the tank bred fish, like our Rift Lake cichlids, so like we deal with like Ryan Jury, who's one of our fellow podcasters. All of his tanks would be, still the pH would be up there. Maybe it's not 8.2, but maybe it's 7.8. So it's still, you really do want to kind of replicate the best conditions rather than just like what conditions are going to be okay and where's it going to survive. You want to make sure it's the best possible conditions where the fish is going to be happy. So the overlap just simply doesn't exist. So that's kind of the first one. The second one is, the second reason is to do with the aggression. Particularly, so like, I think to tell this story I'm going to need to use examples, just for ease's sake. So say you've got this tank that's like this size tank, and you've got 1 green Severum and 5 yellow labs and 2 angelfish in this tank. The main sort of, maybe yellow isn't the best example. Maybe what's something obvious, like blue zebras, something a little bit more grunty. So let's say they're all in this tank. The zebras are just going to go around and just terrorize all the other fish. Maybe they're not going to kill them. Maybe they will. It'll depend, but they will terrorize them. Angels and Severums and stuff are very tough fish, very hardy fish, so they might hold on, they might not die, but they're not going to be happy. They're going to have shredded fins, they're going to be constantly stressed, all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of why I wouldn't recommend it. People will say that you can do it, but I wouldn't agree. I'll leave this next part. I'll leave in a pinned comment. But there's the way the fish sort of communicate, or like the language they speak, if you will, is quite different to each other. So like, I'll leave it in the pinned comment. It'll be much easier for you to read rather than explain. But basically, the way that two fish communicate to each other, like submission or like aggression and stuff, is really different. So what an American cichlid will interpret as sort of submitting to the African's going to interpret that as a challenging it. So that basically, what that ends up doing is that no matter what happens, these fish are always going to be fighting, because they can't tell each other that one of them is submitting to the other one, and it's obviously goes vice versa as well. So it's not really possible for them to admit defeat and take a lower position in the pecking order. So what that means is they're just always going to be thinking someone's trying to challenge them. This fish is having a go at me. I got to fight back. But what that ends up doing is they're just going to be stressed. They're just always going to be fighting. There's no way out. Obviously, in a closed system like a fish tank, they can't just run away and shoot off the other direction and get out the way. They're just always in each other's grill, and they're always going to be fighting. And it's just not like I said, the fish might survive, but they're not going to be thriving. They're not going to be happy. They're just going to be struggling and miserable. And as fish keepers, I think we need to do better. I just think it's a very outdated way of thinking that, oh yeah, they'll adjust to the water parameters. A lot of people will sort of parrot the consistency is better than, having the right pH, but like, I agree you don't want it swinging all over the place, but having it be right is, I think, important, and I think it puts a lot of pressure on like the osmoregulatory systems of the fish. If you're keeping Malawi cichlids at a pH of 6, there's going to be trouble, and vice versa. So you can have the right pH and have it be consistent. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, and I think that's something that we forget. Having it either how it comes out of the tap or just trying to chase it and swinging. Like there's a real overlap there where, this tank, what I use to do is I use is aragonite, and there's a bit of coral in the sump, coral rock, and that the water comes out the tap at like 7.2, but it gets buffered up to like that 8.2 region, and it's pretty consistently staying there. Like it doesn't really swing, don't really have any issues, so it's fine. And I think that's something that we need to remember. The other thing, sorry, I just had to go. We just got a scam call, so someone trying to scam me, but I didn't fall for it. So the thing that I think is really important, the next kind of, it's not as important, but it is still important, is for a lot of cases, I'll admit not all cases, so that's important to remember, but for a lot of cases there's gonna be dietary differences. It's like, for the most part, people keeping Africans or keeping Americans and Africans are just gonna throw all sorts together. But if you throw some Mbuna in with some Oscars eating more protein, insect-based, like snails and insects in the wild, Mbuna eating algae and detritus and that kind of thing, they're not going to combine. You can get what they call Malawi bloat even in your fish, which is basically when Mbuna or Tropheus are eating too much protein, their system basically can't handle it, and it'll start to decompose in their stomach before they can digest it, and they'll die. And so you can get around it. Like if someone's keeping peacocks and haps with Mbuna, you can get around it. But I think again that's the difference between having your fish surviving and having them thriving. Like you do want to hit kind of their dietary requirements. Like if they're supposed to be eating more protein, you want to feed them a little bit more protein. If they want to be eating less protein, you want to feed them less protein. And so I think it's really important to kind of remember that they don't necessarily overlap all the time. So feeding them can be a real challenge. Like you can target feed them and stuff, but when you consider all the other points we've covered, it's just another reason not to, essentially. So yeah, I mean, to conclude, I would really, really strongly recommend that you don't do it. If you do it, there's some fish that'll do better than others, but still, I would just, the bottom line is I would really, please don't do it. If you want to keep a Malawi tank, keep a Malawi tank. If you want to keep a South America tank, keep a South America tank. But you don't have to do it in the same tank, because neither fish is going to really thrive. They might survive, but I think we should be doing better as a hobby at whole. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the bottom line and the conclusion for you all. But I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think. If you guys do it, how your success is, how long you've been doing it. That's another point. As a lot of people say they've been doing it, but they've just got tiny little dams that are babies and they've had them for 2 months. But if you've been keeping them together for like multiple years, how you're getting along, how you get around the feeding requirements, all this kind of thing, I'd really love to hear. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Please make sure to read that pinned comment with the information about the communication. I think that'll be very interesting for you all. But yeah, please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Love you all. Bye.